Soundstripe. Soundstripe.
The views and opinions expressed on this platform are of me, myself, and I, not any agency I'm affiliated with. So please do not take what I say personally. Today on the podcast, I have with me James Boom Howard. Dude has been involved in EMS for 20 plus years, give or take. Currently, he is a CCT paramedic, FPC paramedic. He's certified in CISM, which is Critical Incident Stress Management. He's a neonatal and pediatric paramedic, certified in all of that. He's an EMS educator, mental health and suicide awareness advocate, a peer support coordinator, and working on his master's in clinical psychology. So yeah, he has a whole lot more letters behind his name than I could say in one breath, which is super impressive. He's even been on the Flight Bridge Ed podcast, EMS World, plenty of others, and now he's lowered himself to be on mine. So it's kind of a big deal. Uh, I got in contact with James when I was in a really low point. One of my favorite people on this planet actually got me in contact with him to talk to some things out. And by finding him, found a solid guy with a mission to make a difference. If you want to learn more about that, look up Stay Fit for Duty. It's a solid platform, solid message. But not only is he widely educated, he's passionate about helping first responders and breaking stigmas in mental health in first responders. And it's a very contagious mission. So I'm not going to lie, when I was told to contact you, I felt like I was at a dead end and was going down a pretty rough road. So when I looked you up, because I'm very much a skeptic, I found your video on the This Is My Brave platform, and you gave a spiel about the video. It's called The Helpers. If you want to look it up, 20 out of 10 recommend. I sobbed watching it. So appreciate you, man. Appreciate all that you do. If you want to give a little blurb about yourself as well, go ahead.
Thank you. You did great. You got all of the high notes. That's it, really. I'm working on my master's. I'll be getting a master's in clinical psychology. I am a flight paramedic with Boston Medflight out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm the founder of the Stay Fit for Duty platform.
Awesome. Go ahead and we'll cover this one. Tell me about Stay Fit for Duty. Like, what is it? What does it mean? Is this a gym setup, like workout tips? Like what you got?
So eventually, yeah, that's the dream. So Stay Fit started in 2018. The goal in 2018 was really simple. We just wanted to share stories. Like we all know people that have gone through stuff, right? We've all had dark days. We've all had trials and tribulations. And in sharing some of my own like darkest stories were really helpful to me. They were really helpful to the people that I was talking to. And it helped us remember that we're not alone. And what we've kind of expanded that message to now is not only are you not alone, but to take the same like fire and tenacity and grit that we all put out when we're helping other people and reflect some of that back on us and how much healthier we can be in that sense. And I joked when you said workout plans because over the next couple of years, our plan is to start really incorporating more like physical and mental mindfulness all together, recognizing that mental health and physical health are really closely aligned. So as we continue to grow and evolve, you'll see more of that as well.
Makes sense. So tell me, why did you get into EMS at all? What got you into this job with your 50, 1100 million certifications? Like, what's your journey, man? Tell me about it.
So I started before I even had one. My dad was a paramedic. My first EMS call was at the ripe old age of 3. Was still in a car seat. This was back when paramedics could like take the fly car home, and the idea of like monitoring from home was a thing. The rumor goes that my dad was working to get me to my grandmother's house, to his mom's house, and got a call on the way. So had to like take me in the fly car to do the call. It's not a popular story at our house. My mother hates this story. She's not
I
here
can
for it in any
imagine.
way, shape, or form. But yeah, I grew up around the profession. I was really like proud of the profession. And in high school, when you can like choose what you want to do for a career exploration, I chose the ambulance, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I think it's one of the best jobs in the world. I think really like all of civil service is a tremendous profession, fire, Leo, EMS, any combination therein. And I just really liked the ability to like be the first person there. I liked that it was raw. I liked that like you can genuinely save somebody's life, and everyone can. I don't say that on a high horse, but like there's something really special about being the first human that shows up when someone calls for help. And I really took a ton of pride and take a ton of pride in holding a metric of that profession.
Very good, dude. Well said. Also, I want to point out, I was halfway joking when I said 20 plus years. How long have you actually been in EMS?
It's so eerily close, it hurts my soul. Uh, I I answered my first EMS call as a assistant ambulance technician, which isn't even really a thing. It's like a dude in an ambulance who can like hand the trained providers like some stuff, right? Like no right to do anything. I answered my first call at 16. So I am like real close to 2 decades in the profession. But clinically, I got my EMT ticket in New York at 18. I got my paramedic licensure at 19. So I'm well into my like tail end of my first decade. Yeah, I've been doing it for about 17, 18 years, licensed almost 20 years all told.
Can we just give a round of applause because that's wildly impressive, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's so common though. Like we all know people that enter the profession at 18, right? Like I started earlier. I really started for high school credits. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but really like it was something I was gonna have to do anyway. So I figured I'd at least do it at a place that I really like.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funny things about EMS. Like, I mean, I agree. Like, there's no other job like this. There's no other job like this. But it's so wild to think that, like, if you called 911, your life could be in the hands of someone who just graduated high school. Like, literally went from raising their hands to go to the bathroom to now they're coming to save your life. So that's still a wild concept.
I think about all the narcotics that I gave as a paramedic before I could drink. Like I'm just like doling out like controlled substances. Like it's no big deal, and like I'm not even allowed to like go to a bar and have a beer. I mean, our military is this, right? Like you're in boot camp and you are asked to do some of the hardest jobs in the world and some of the most challenging jobs in the world at 18, 19, 20, right?
True.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a really messed up like combination of like, well, you're in your physical prime, so like go lift that every person, go serve our country, go do whatever. But like hold on the alcohol.
The frontal lobe is not there yet, friend. You're gonna have to wait a second, but go ahead. Meemaw needs you.
Right, exactly.
um, okay. So in your journey, what made you go from like working on the truck and doing flight, which you still do on the side, I'm 99.9% sure, to like taking this step and the mental health aspect of EMS? Like, was there one specific thing, or was it like you saw the need for it? What's your setup with that?
Yeah, it was a little of both. I mean, my trajectory is kind of non-traditional. I in New York, if you want your paramedic licensure, 99% of the time you have to get an associate's degree. So I came out with my paramedic card and a 2-year degree, and thought about like continuing on and getting my 4-year degree, but realized that I wasn't going to be able to do both well. Like I wasn't going to be able to continue on in undergrad and work, and I didn't want to lose like all of this like practical knowledge I just gained. So I told my parents I was going to take a year and do the EMT paramedic thing. I believe I did 4 or 5 before I went back to college. I went to college in Maine, finished out my degree in medical biology. And that's when I kind of made the transition from like 911 to flight and realized that like it truly had nothing to do with flight. I mean, flying in a helicopter is amazing, but I really wanted to take care of the sickest people that I possibly could and work at like the absolute peak of my license level. Like just do everything that a paramedic is supposed to do and should be able to do and all of this stuff. And that was in Boston, and that was at Boston Med Flight. And that is how I made my kind of leap from 911 to critical care transport. The addition of the mental health front, you're absolutely right. There was a component of like me recognizing me recognizing the need through my own struggles and my own dark times and the glaring like unavailability of support that was culturally informed and kind of had an understanding of what we did and how we do it. Um, the transition to make that more of a full-time gig is pretty recent. It was more just like a lack of sustainability of like I couldn't call this a hobby anymore. Like I had to like buckle down and get a job. And I also really wanted to become one of those. I know it's going to sound so cliche, but like truly one of those other frontline providers. If you don't think your mental health practitioner is a healthcare provider or be a frontline professional, like you are mistaken. Like for sure, they didn't have to throw on an N95 and a gown and like go into the ICU like we all did. I'm not saying they did, but like they're the ones that picked up the phone at 2 in the morning when we called them about it. So I wanted to do more than just advocate for more cultural competency and really work to be that change and be one of those clinicians that could jive with what I hope to be both professions. I hope that sticks for quite some time, and I do clinical medicine and I do clinical psychology simultaneously.
Dude, I love it. And when you say cliche, like it's not cliche, it's a real thing, and it's so necessary because like especially like if I'm going to go to therapy and I say if I'm going to go, I am in, but you have your therapist and you have your counselors, you have your psychiatrists, whoever you go to, who are certified in stress management and PTSD and depression and, suicidal ideations, all this stuff. You have them who are certified and like know how to deal with that. But for me, it would take it to another level if I walked in the office and I'm talking to whomever and they're like, yeah, I used to work on the truck. Like, you get it. There's that certain, like, I guess you could say connection to where it's like, it's more than just somebody who knows how to deal with it versus somebody who has actually been in the soup of it, if that makes sense. And I think it's super commendable. And like you've said, I think it's definitely an area that needs to be brought more to light. And especially whenever people start getting burnt out, but they don't want to leave this field completely, like this is another avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. The lines are short. There's not a huge line for people to become a counselor, so it's incredibly doable. It's a grind for sure, but it's very doable. I will let you know when I complete my degree if I still feel that way. But it is important to like I grilled my therapist, the wonderful and patient and kind human that I see now. I said, what do you know about first responders if you've never been one? And she was like, well, I was at ground zero when the West Tower fell. Like, I was part of like
Ooh.
the second set of critical incident providers that were there, right? And it was you can't see Alexa's face on the call, right? But it was this look of like, oh, okay, like you've never stair-chaired somebody down a flight of stairs, but like you've been to the show, like
Yeah.
you've done the thing, and that was like the kind of competency I needed, and that's a really important point. I think is like there are really good therapists out there that aren't first responders. There are also really therapists that were first responders, right? So like I don't want everyone to just run to the dude who's got 10 years of fire and EMS behind them if they're not a good fit. But it is a really important question to ask, and it is completely appropriate to like tease out like how prepared are you to deal with my trauma, and how well do you understand my worldview? Like how differently do we look at the world, and how well do you understand that change?
Yeah, dude, exactly. And my next question actually I know you said you're getting your master's, you're working on it, but I'm not 99% sure you'll be able to answer this. Where do you feel like, as far as when someone is in the midst of, I would even say like as far as a crisis, but like someone's going through something in EMS, where do you say we would draw the line between thinking like, and this is a question, I guess, for me, like, I'm just going to get through this. I just need some resilience and to get past this versus like reaching out for help. Where do you see that line at? Is there even a line? Where would you say someone like, when you start feeling yourself going through that, what is the point of where, okay, it's time to stop trying to bear this on your own shoulders, reach out for help?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack in that question. I think it's a great question. First of all, it's the perfect time for me to remind everyone that we, first responders, people listening to this podcast, are some of the most resilient humans I've ever met. So you have resilience. I make kind of a metaphor that like you have a bicep, like we all have muscles. right? It just depends on how much you work on them, how much you rest them, how well you feed them, right? To determine like how strong and how capable they are. So you already have resilience, and that's great. You're right. Like, do I just need to like tap into some of that resilience and get past it, or do I need to reach out for help? Um, I think inherently we know that. I think when our fundamentals start to shift, right? Like when I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. I mean, I have weeks. I'm a grad student who works full time, right? I have weeks that I look at a calendar and just go, right? Like I have to like get through it for a couple days, and that's totally fine. And it's again part of being a resilient human, and like we expect that of people. Um, when your ability to do the things really starts to get affected, when you emotionally look at something and just say like this is insurmountable, like I truly don't think I can do this, are all appropriate times to reach out for help. And sometimes you may just need like a tweak of your self-care, right? Like maybe you do need to not work on the research paper till midnight, and you do need to get 8 hours of sleep because you're working tomorrow, right? Or maybe you do need to reschedule that podcast with Alexis because you're swamped and like you just can't get that bit done. Like you can always like, make little tweaks to reinforce your self-care. I promise that's only happened like 3 times, right? Like you just need to reinforce that self-care when, I guess the shortest answer is, for anybody looking for the Cliff Notes, like when you are having trouble sleeping, when you're having trouble eating, or eating way too much, when you're having trouble like just maintaining your fundamentals, is a solid time to reach out and say, hey, like here I am. I need some help. And also, really important side note, that that's completely fine and perfectly psychologically normal, psychologically healthy, well functioning humans need assistance from time to time, right? Because assistance is so variable. It's as much as me asking my girlfriend if she can feed the cats tonight because I'm getting out of work late, to talking to a crisis counselor and everything in between. So I also want to take just a second to like lower that barrier of like what reaching out for help is, right? Is it a 2-hour phone call with some dude that you never met before, but a buddy of yours said like, hey, let's chat? Or is it like inpatient therapy, right? And there's a chasm between the two. And I worry that in the first responder world, we see reaching out for help as this like huge thing, when it can really be like, hey man, I am swamped. Can I like talk to you for half an hour? Or can you like help me like look at my schedule a little differently so I can see what I can get squared away? And it can be really small and have a huge impact. So there's no straight line. I think it's super variable, but we all inherently kind of know where that is.
I want to touch on something you said, which all of that was excellent, very good. Like that struggle to reach out for help, because like for me, maybe it's just me, I look at it as like, well, I don't want to reach out for help because somebody else is probably going through something a whole lot worse than me, or like, I don't really want to burn anybody else. But at the same time, when you reach that limit, it doesn't even have to be like, kind of like what you're saying, it doesn't have to be like you go to inpatient or you go check yourself in the ER, whatever. Like reaching out for help can, and I've learned this the hard way, literally is just reaching out to your friends. You don't have to go to therapy. You don't have to go to counseling. You should if you need it. There's no reason not to. But yeah, I wanted to touch base on that just because that's a very important thing for first responders and really anybody in general to understand, that your support system is there for a reason. Nobody has to live on Alcatraz.
It's important to remember that like making a million like little asks for help can sometimes, not always, but sometimes like completely like remove the need for that huge ask, right? Like if I get like little bits of support every now and again, then I might not need this like huge and cumbersome and uncomfortable huge ask for help, right? Like I see my therapist right now like PRN, like maybe quarterly, truly every couple months. And some of that is just a good idea when you're in grad school, right? And some of that is just maintenance. But like doing that prevents the 2 a.m. like I'm not well and I really need your help, and I'm on the phone with 988, which is a fantastic tool, right? Like, but there's a lot to be said for like the preventative maintenance of self-care and of checking in, of like if I do these little things as I need them while they're small, then they may not boil down into big things. And if they're already a big thing, because this is great advice that we all could have used 10 years ago, that's okay. Like make the big ask and then we can titrate down from there.
No, dude, that's a solid point. I've never even thought about that. So that's a solid point. One of the messages you do give out on Stay Fit for Duty, and it's actually on my fridge right now, it's okay to not be okay. And even though I feel like that's not a cheesy phrase just because it's so powerful, really appreciate that. But another kind of on that note of like the little ask for help, and something else I want to point out that you said is like the knowing kind of like those triggers, but also like the warning signs of when you're starting to reach that peak of like, yeah, it's time I need to ask for help, because I've noticed that when I need help, or when I need to reach out to somebody, I do blank, like not eating, or I eat too much. For me, that's always my struggle, is snacking becomes immense. And I'm like, ooh, my jeans don't fit right. I should probably talk to somebody soon. I totally get that. So what would you say on this note, in a nice, beautiful segue, what would you say to a first responder, or, we can even branch out to anybody in general who wants help, but doesn't know where to go or what to do? Like, what would you say to that person? Because they're out there. I was one of them.
Totally. So I think step one, I'll say, is like finding a therapist is one of those things that's really helpful when you don't need a therapist, right? Like the best time to find a therapist is like when you're not in crisis, right? I can be really nerdy and really medical and remind you that like the more stressed you are, like the less smart you are, right? Like as stress climbs, like our cognition falls. And if you've never seen that, just ask any bystander on a car accident to like do anything for you, right? Like we like pull that person out and we're like, I need you to walk to the side of the road, and they stare at you blankly, like because they're in shock, right? Shock is nothing more than like a really high stress state. So the longer we wait until it's like this like pivotal moment, then it can be really complicated to go through all these steps. And I would argue, as I'll include in Alex's show notes, this idea of like a protocol for how to find a therapist, right? And the first thing I say is, if you're in crisis, if you're imminent threat to yourself or someone else, or you just really need someone to talk to, like it's 2 a.m. and you've texted a couple of people and nobody's awake, crisis hotline 988 is a fantastic resource. The other caveat there is like if you're truly unsafe, 911 is a fantastic resource. It's scary, it's big, we're all a part of it, but like we're talking about staying alive to tomorrow, right? So we're not talking about like little inconveniences here. And I promise you, every human in the world would rather talk to you for 4 hours than give a 15-minute eulogy. So don't be afraid to pull those really, really important triggers when you need to, right? They are built there for a reason. And I've done both. I have talked to people until 5 a.m. and I've given eulogies, and I can tell you which one sucks way worse, right? Way, way worse. So first and foremost, like try as hard as you possibly can to not be afraid to use those crisis resources when you have them. Otherwise, just start reaching out. Your friends, your family, programs like mine and 100 other like them. Like I would love to tell you that I'm the only one in town, but I'm not, and that's okay because it's a problem and we need more people. And just start to ask questions like, hey, how can I find a therapist? How can I reach out? How can I talk to somebody? You truly do just have to start. If you're uncomfortable doing that at work, do it in your friend group. If you're uncomfortable doing it in your friend group, do it at work, right? You do have options, and you have people who make themselves very available on purpose to be able to be connected with when you're in need.
I just want to write down that quote. People would rather stay up for 4 hours with you while you're in a crisis than deliver a 15-minute eulogy. Dude, that's powerful. And another beautiful segue. I'll go ahead and get to like the interview part of like the questions I always ask, but this one is a nice little switch into it. How do you balance your work and personal life, and how do you decompress?
I'm so glad you asked this question because I'm the mental health guy and I'm this flipping through for Alex's mom, right? And I'm supposed to be the subject matter expert, and it's a really good time for me to tell you that like not always well, right? Like I don't always do it well, and I say that because it's important to know, like even those of us who like do this and live in this space and like want to be this human sometimes mess it up. I work really hard to be deliberate about when I'm working versus when I'm not working. I'm incredibly fortunate. I own a home for the first time in my life, and that home comes with a garage that I can pull my car into. I understand that that makes me a tremendously lucky and privileged human. I've had a roof over my head for a lot of my life, but I've never had a garage. And I chill there like for a while. Like you drive home from work and you sit in the garage and you're on Instagram, social, playing a game, whatever, like just taking some time. Like I think it's invaluable for me. It's my like switch of like, okay, when you get out of the car, you're not critical care transport specialist, James. You might not even be stay fit for duty, James. Like you're a guy and you're somebody's boyfriend, right? And you own two cats and you're all of these other things, right? And your neighbors want to know if you can come have drinks. Like all of those things. I tried really hard to never bring my boots inside. As silly as that sounds, A, because gross, right? Because think about what we all walk
Right.
in every day, and B, it's just so intentional of like I'm leaving this outside. If I could make like a journeyman's closet like in my garage to put my flight suit in, I would. Because it's just that very deliberate, like, okay, like I'm not doing that. Um there are also days like today where I spend 4 hours of my life answering work emails, right? So like it's far from a perfect balance, but it's something that I really try to do. My decompression is a million different ways. It is as simple as like going to my barber and like getting a solid haircut and like shooting the breeze with some dudes for a little while. It is working out. It is like meeting up with friends and like being really intentional about like grabbing a drink or grabbing something to eat or something like that. I kind of do it in a variety of ways because I've never found one thing that works every single time. What I will say is for me personally, no matter how much I didn't want to work out, I always feel better after I work out. So I should probably put that higher on the list than I do sometimes. But man, like lifting weights, cycling, whatever I do is like really, really helpful.
No, I totally understand about the gym part because like I honestly I hate going to the gym. I hate it. The whole ride there, I'm dreading it. Sometimes I talk myself out of it because I'm like I can't I can't today. But every time guaranteed, especially when I get on the treadmill and I just run as hard as I can until I literally have to sit on the like lay on the ground and wheezing, always feel better. Always feel better. So I totally get that. Also, totally agree about not bringing the boots inside. I used to like, I couldn't understand why people, when we get off shift, especially working 24s, some places 48s that I've worked, like, I couldn't understand when people would change before they left work. And I'm like, dude, just go home. Like, just, like, you're already, like, especially if you get pulled over, like, you're already in uniform, whatever. But not saying that I have, wink, wink. Um, but I started doing that, and I leave my boots in my car. I even bring shoes to change into, and it does help. One, when you sit in the car for a few minutes, close your eyes, try not to fall asleep because oopsie doopsie on that one. But like, it helps with that transition of I'm literally changing out of this uniform physically, the I guess you could say physical transformation of I'm leaving work behind, I'm putting on different clothes, I'm going home, and this is my for me it's my safe place. Like my house has to be where I go to retreat because even if the shift was good, it's still like it's while you're on shift, you're in that headspace the whole time and you have to be. So, in all the things you do, because it's a lot, what prevents burnout for you, whether it's on the truck or like getting your masters and doing all of that? Like, what is your secret? What is the secret sauce? Expound on the mystery behind it. And if you are burnout, you have every right to say that.
Yeah, right now's the time where I just say I'm burned out. I think it's I things I've learned. So there's no secret sauce. Believe me, if I had it, like I would be on Alexis podcast and I would be on like all the podcasts in the world, right? I'd be a millionaire and it'd be great. Um, I am much more intentional now of like recognizing the signs of burnout. Like I'm a pretty compassionate dude, and I understand that we take care of a lot of people on their worst days. And when I come back and I'm just like full like vitriol, like that stupid patient, that stupid nurse, that stupid doctor, ah, right? Like, I'm quick to be like, maybe I need sleep, right? Like when I'm like up till 2 in the morning, like because I don't like the way like the commas fall in like my research paper, like that's a good sign that I should like take a minute. I also like really lean on a good solid group of friends that'll be like, hey dude, like turn it down. Like, I know that you can't do it right now, and I don't know if this is just one of those like hell weeks, right, that you have to go through, but like you got to take a break. And I reluctantly, but like I listen to them because oftentimes we are so much better at seeing it in other people than we are in seeing it ourselves. The advice that I would give anybody who's like got their pen out, right, is like, what's Boomer going to say for preventing burnout? Is just listen. Like when I'm not here to poke fun at anybody's caffeine intake, right? But when my day starts with a cold brew, I have like a lunch bang and then like a ghost for dinner. Like I need sleep. Like that's my body saying like you are only propping us up with chemicals right now. Like it's time to like reconvene. When I'm mad at patients, when I'm mad at school, when I'm just like irritable, cranky, sad, like those are all signs, right? And I think one of the biggest things that we as healthcare providers, and as much as I don't like to genderize it, and you and I have had a million like conversations about that, like I, men specifically, like spend more time listening to what your body's telling you than griping about the fact that like your body's telling it to you. Like your body's literally trying to tell you what's up. And I think guys specifically are like, oh, men don't cry and men don't do this and blah. And I'm like, or your body is literally like your check engine lights on, right? Like it's just telling you that like it needs some help. So preventing burnout for me is just listening to what my body's telling me.
I just want to point out you didn't have to at me about the caffeine intake, but okay.
No, right. I hit all the big brands too because I've done that. I've been like, well, this gas station doesn't have Ghost, which is my favorite, and one day they'll sponsor me. But they do have Bang, and like I have a Ghost at the station. Like, and you're like, oh, by the way, why does my head hurt? You're like, oh, I don't know, she had 700 milligrams of caffeine today. Like, it's
And no
so
water, never any
yeah,
water.
and zero water. Exactly, exactly right.
No, what you're saying about listening, dude, I recently couldn't understand why. Like, I was driving to work frustrated and I was at work frustrated and I would leave work frustrated. And it kind of was coming out on calls where I was like, not being mean to patients, but to the point where I was like, man, I don't know why like I'm saying this. Like, this is a little harsh. And I finally, my partner one day, she looked at me and she was like, I said something about like I need to take some time off. I think I'm getting burnt out. She was like, "You are." Like it's kind of not been so much fun to work with you because you kind of have a terrible attitude. And was it brutally honest? Yes. Was it what I needed? Yeah. And having those people in your life that don't just build you up all the time, but they're also able to stand in the gap and be like, "Hey, this is what's going on with you right now. This is what I'm seeing. And I think you should take note of this because it's kind of affecting you and everybody around you."
Hard conversations to have, but helpful. And if you maybe you're not as close with your partner, right, as Lexus and her colleague are, but you can softer versions of that include like, so what are you doing to like take care of you? And like, how can I help you get through this shift? Like, what can I do as your partner to like make this shift land like a little bit softer, right? And just like starting those, oh man, when I have a terrible 24, like this is what I do that like really helps me decompress and stuff like that. And you can start that conversation. I'm here for the sledgehammer. Don't get me wrong. None of my friends are like, gosh, James, I don't know. They're like, hey, knucklehead. Like, remember that time you run a mental health account? Go to sleep. Like, you can't do both. But if maybe you want to have like a softer conversation, there are options too. But I'm always here for like, hey, how can I help you? And like, what can I do? And just be compassionate. And be like, hey, there's a lot going on, and how can I help you be to the place you want to be?
This is why I had you on because I'm so much of like the brutal honesty and like that's because that's just what I need. So you being like, oh, well, you could also, I'm like, oh, yeah, some people don't do well with that.
All about options.
I was obviously looking forward to everything else, but was excited about this one. Boomer, what is your favorite type of call? There are so many. You have your cardiac. I personally love a good respiratory. You have your abdominal. You have your psych. You have your lift assist, your cancels, your refusals. You have so many types. What is your favorite type of call and why?
So I don't have one, but I'm going to narrow it down to two. Sick baby calls. And I don't say that I know you should see the look she's giving me now. Like, so remember, like I work at a team that does a lot of things and works really hard to take very, very good care of sick neonates. Um, man, like when neonates or newborns are sick and you can like make them less sick, like and it's a skill set that not a lot of people have. So it's like that is like peak paramedic right there. Like when you're like walking the doctor through like fundamentals of like neonatal resuscitation, right? Those are absolutely high on my list. I don't want sick baby calls. I don't like. I'm not like hoping for a sick baby call, right? But like the just the pride you get of like working so hard to learn this like really niche chunk of our profession and being taught by people that make this their life, right, is really really powerful. And the other one, as like standard paramedic as it is, man, like good trauma. Like I'm not a trauma junkie in any way, shape, or form, but I'm at a system that gives blood. I'm at a system that does finger thoracostomies. We have ultrasound. Like what I can do for a trauma arrest now versus when I was 16, like not only in licensure, but like in evolution of medicine, is just so cool. And it's so like tangible and fixable and like raw. And I'm just, yeah, I'm a huge fan of those. I don't know. I love every type of call we have, except like lifts assist and nonsense that don't require medical helicopters. But like, those are two of my favorite.
In my mind, I was expecting that from like ground medic, not flight medic. So understandably about the lift assist and stuff that doesn't require like things that really don't require the helicopter. So good point. Good point.
Yeah. So it's like every branch of medicine has their lift assist, right? And like and don't get me wrong, like lift assists like have their place and they can be helpful to the community, but like when you're one part of a very specialized team with very finite numbers, and like Bob's Community Hospital is like, well, the ALS truck wasn't going to be here for 6 hours. You're like, yeah, but like now the state doesn't have a medical helicopter for two. So are we sure we made the right decision right now? And those are really challenging. It's also not an insignificant risk to every human to be in a helicopter, right? So
Yeah.
it's also like, oh, and by the way, this isn't just seamless, and this doesn't just happen. Like people make like tremendously calculated decisions to do this every day, and the fact that we're doing it from Mary's token can be a little frustrating.
Dude, I guess this is where I'll put it. I could not do your job as a flight medic. One, primarily, I hate flying. Two, the size of the ambulance is small enough, let alone the size of the helicopter in the back is the size of a porta potty. So I'll pass. Number three, dude, I'm just gonna be straight up. I hate interfacility. So like that's another thing. But mostly because I've been the person to get the bill for the flight, it hurts. And like kind of like you're saying of like, well, now there's not a helicopter for a couple hours because you could have used a truck. I would gladly take, and I don't want to say this because I don't want it to happen next shift. I would gladly take 5 IFT calls for one person not to get at least one helicopter bill, let alone besides that. Um, just I mean, I haven't flown anybody out in forever just because I'm in a different system now, different agency. But the decisions going into like, should we fly this patient should be, I feel like, highlighted and educated even more so, just because one, the bill for the patient is stupid expensive, but also because the resources required for a helicopter are so extensive and very limited as is already. So I do agree with you on that like, hey guys, did we really need a helicopter for this?
Yeah, and I gotta not maybe not humble brag, but stand out for just a second. Part of the reason that I chose Medflight, we're a nonprofit, so if we'll do what's called balance billing. So we'll bill your insurance, and if you can't cover the difference, then we'll scrub it, which is great. So we're not the flight program that puts liens on people's houses and things like that. I understand many of those practices have gone by the wayside, so I'm not trying to throw shade at any HEMS program. I also will say that I'm 6'2" and about 235 pounds, so I'm not small by any stretch of the imagination. But we fly some of the bigger helicopters in the game. So if you can tolerate a Vambulance, then you can probably tolerate the back of our aircraft because they're very similar. They're not A-stars and stuff that like the Midwest. So I'm spoiled brat is what I'm saying. I'm a total spoiled brat. I work at like the Princess M's agency. I'm really lucky.
I don't miss the Vambulance, so I might pass on that. If I ever had to go back to it, I wouldn't mind, but at the same time, don't miss it. So what is, and if you have more than one story. I love a good story time. What's the craziest and slash or funniest call you've ever had?
Oof. Um, I've had so many. I don't even know if I can label it right. I mean, I've had like crazy traumatic calls, but like crazy medical calls. I've had like just all sorts of crazy stuff. I think like some of the funniest calls I've had, and I might divert from like story time and just like share like an overarching thing. But when I think of like the stories that are the funniest, it's like always about my team. It's like, what did my team and I experience? Like, what what did we share? Like the congeniality that we had. Like that was always my top for sure.
Very good. Maybe I'll get a story time out of this. A recent a recent or past call that's challenged you, whether it made you realize there was something like, because we have those calls where it's like, man, like I knew what to do. I can do the things to, keep this person alive or until we get to the hospital, whatever. But like, I need to study up more on this. Or we have the calls where it's a patient that's like, that impacts us in a certain way. So what's a call that has done that for you?
I have a good recent example here, and I'll be as mindful of privacy as I can. But I was at a scheduled interfacility, which is 99% of what I do. Um, and to get to the intensive care unit, we had to go through the emergency department, which is also true of like 99% of hospitals in the world. And walking through the emergency department, we heard, "Oh, thank God, MedFlight's here." And they thought we were there for them. We weren't, and when they found out we weren't, they were like, "Yes, you are, because we need your help. We need your help right now. There is a dead 6-year-old in trauma one, and we need your help." And we worked that code with that ER team for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, and ended up getting that kid to a children's hospital, where unfortunately the outcome was kind of what we expected. I think the challenge there was multifaceted. It was the one thing in interfacility world is we always have like a sliver of prep time. We are very highly trained. We are very very focused in what we do, but like if you're looking at getting into HEMS or critical care, the idea of the unknown medical kind of goes away. Like we all in 911, we're like, go to Brown Street for an unknown medical, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But like in HEMS and critical care, they're like, you have a 20-year-old female and she's 42 kilos, and here is her problem, and you can like look so good because you're so nuanced, right? Like you've studied up on your protocol on the way there, you've reviewed up to date or something, and you're just super laser focused. Um, it wasn't that we had any trouble managing this kid. I mean, this kid was very complicated, but it wasn't like my partner and I forgot pals. We do a lot of neonate and peds, so that was not a challenging part. The family component was definitely hard and definitely something that I specialize in. So interacting with the parents of this child was a challenging bit, and interacting with all the healthcare providers that just weren't um, mentally in the right place to like take care of a kid, be it like a hospital that just doesn't take care of kids or anything along those lines, um, can just be really, really challenging. Kind of watching that in real time is frustrating. Everybody did what they had to do. We did what we had to do. Our communications team was amazing because now they have to tell an entire separate unit of a hospital, like, just kidding, you're getting another crew and you're getting another crew here in a little while. And there's a lot of complicated hospital dynamics, right? Because an ER doc just stole an ICU doc's bed, patient, the whole thing, right? And that never goes over well. But it was an equal part of a very challenging call, but also a heartwarming call in the sense of like, it never ceases to amaze me what we do for sick humans, right? And in so many other places of the world, they just would have said, "Well, this kid's dead," right? And not even like with malice, right? This was like, "Well, nothing we can do." And this institution literally pulled out all the stops and like lassoed a helicopter crew that was just walking by and had nothing to do with this, and really showed that family that like there was no stone left unturned. Um, and we did everything we could for a really sick kid, which is powerful. So even when you don't get like neuro intact ROSC and all this stuff that we want to have or we think we need to have. Definitely crazy, is definitely challenging, but also really enlightening and powerful all at the same time.
Kudos to y'all, man, because it's one thing to work on a sick kid. It's another to work on a I mean, sorry to put it this way, but work on a dead kid for an hour and a half. And I mean, at least be able to fly him out. Like, if nothing else, dude, it's super impressive. Not gonna lie.
We had a lot of good hands on that team. A tremendous amount of people did everything they were supposed to do, and like you said, gave a family that was really struggling every last ounce of hope that we could.
Yeah. Phew. Sorry, Pete's calls for me. I'm just like, ugh. So now I'm like, how do I move on from this? What is a piece of advice you'd give to someone either going into EMS or someone already in EMS, someone considering going into EMS? What you got?
So if you're already in EMS, just invest in your own self-care. The overtime is never going away. The extra shifts are never going away. You are replaceable, and I say that in the sense of like, so don't bleed for your employer, right? Like we all have this illusion that like XYZ ambulance will never be the same when boom hour is gone, and like maybe like at some like social level that's true, but like your employer will replace you by the end of business, at the end of the week. So do your job well, be the best representative of your profession and your licensure and yourself that you can be, but you don't have to answer every overtime page. You don't have to stay until 3 a.m. every time. Like, you're allowed and encouraged to take some rest. We are a 24-hour shop. You will have to work some night shifts. You will have to stay late every now and again. Like, this is where like leadership gets mad at me and they're like, everyone's going to leave at 4 p.m. Meh. It's like, no, like there's a balance, right? Some days I get out of work late. Some days I pick up overtime. Like, there's absolutely a balance. But we oftentimes skew that balance really, really far. So I encourage anybody who is already in to just remember that they need to care for themselves as well as they care for their patients. And if you kind of use that as your metric, I think you're in a good spot. If you're going into EMS, you are going into one of the best jobs in the world. Maybe not the best agency, maybe not the newest equipment. I can tell you in my career, I've worked at a variety of institutions with a variety of like pay, morale, equipment, what have you, right? But like, I've also made friends that I consider family, and have been truly blessed to be able to help people in their darkest times. Sometimes that's an interfacility nonsensical, like back to the nursing home. Sometimes that's everything we thought the pamphlet would be, and like we do CPR and they get back and shake our hand when they're alive again. But it really is an amazing job. And just start with remembering that it's always a give and take, but you have to put yourself first at least most of the time.
Very, very true. Because one of the things, I know it's cliche, but I always say it: if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of the patient. That's just how it is at the end of the day. And I'm sure I know the answer by now, but if you could change it all, would you still take this path and go into EMS?
Man, I'd go to tax accounting so quick it would make your head spin. Yeah.
Not the taxes.
No, I would. I really would. I maybe would have gone. Maybe I would have finished my bachelor's a little sooner. Maybe I would have like gone to different agencies and like taken a bigger leap like professionally earlier in my career. But for me personally, and it's different for everybody, like, yeah, like I went on my first call when I was 3. Like, yeah, I was totally going to go into EMS, and it's opened to some amazing doors for me, and it's truly something I'm proud of. I am a lot of things, and I live in all of those spaces. And Alexis and I have known each other for a little while, right? And knows kind of some of the funny, quirky, like not EMS things. But I'm a paramedic, and I'm a proud representative of the profession. So yeah, I absolutely would.
Awesome. You got anything else to add, dude?
No, this was amazing. I want to hit on 2 things. I'm not slumming it by being on your podcast. I am trying to like be the venture capitalist. Like, I want to be like, yeah, I was episode 2 of this amazing podcast. I'll soon amass like millions of followers and like be subscription only and all of this. No, and as far as like professionally, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Stay Fit for Duty. We have a link tree right now, which Alexis will kind of pass out in her posts and stuff like that, so you can see it. Our website will be live here in probably 2 weeks. I hope I'm not crunching the person who's helping me make the website too much by saying that. We have a Shopify store. You can grab some swag. You can grab some stickers. You can grab every penny that I make for Stay Fit for Duty goes back into Stay Fit for Duty. So you're not helping me buy a Tesla. Like, you're helping me make this bigger, better, and helping other people. So yeah, that's it. And if you want to get a hold of me by email, you can get me at stayfit4duty@gmail.com.
I mean, I was gonna include all of that, but I also wanted to. My hope was that when I bought the new hat, which it's sick, 20 out of 10 recommend. I was hoping for the Tesla, but okay, whatever. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, we'll see. If I sell enough hats, then yeah. If I can help all the first responders and still have some money left over, then yeah, I'll probably get a Tesla.
Well, dude, the honor has been all mine. I appreciate you. I'm excited about this. I'm excited for you, man. I have all faith in you, 100%.
Thank you very much. I am so proud to work alongside you and be a colleague of yours. And you're doing great things, and keep it up.
Appreciate you. And so with that. So guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, future topic ideas, please email me at 22atthelips.podcast@gmail.com. Again, that's 22@thelips.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Never stop learning, and be safe out there, friends. It's not you, it's me. It's because my mom listens and she would have a heart attack.
Fair enough. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Sorry, Mom. So,